Begin recording. And we're bringing it over here to, why did it do that? Sorry, there seems to be, oh my gosh. Hold up a second. Sorry, it's I know it's never done this before. This is interesting. Sorry, just give me 1 second. It's okay if it's recording because it just does this and I work with it. So, yes, this is me not being a professional. Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's not letting me throw it right now onto YouTube. So I'm going to, what we're just going to do is I'm going to. Hey everyone, it is Ellen from Advocate of Soul. And as you know, I'm kicking off my fall season here with Barbara Symons. And, I took a break a little bit from doing these for a couple months just to get myself recalibrated. And we're back for the autumn. And I'm just so excited about the lineup. And I'm so excited about having Barbara on here because Barbara has written, certain books regarding her own personal journey from leaving Christianity and discovering just who she is and unpacking all that entails. And it's just a real honor, Barbara, having you here with us today. And so why don't you introduce yourself to all of my guests and we'll get started.
Well, again, thank you for asking how you pronounce my name, because a lot of people, they'll ask, how do you pronounce it? And I'll say Symons, and then they introduce me as Simmons.
Oh,
and it makes me giggle. But yeah, I guess it's a French-Canadian name. My husband was born in Canada, and there's a lot of Symons up there, maybe not so many down here in the States, but a lot in Canada. Married for 47 years.
Wow, congratulations.
No, long time. Got my pedigree within Christian fundamentalism starting at about age 4.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, just there's a lot I still have not unpacked with that. But anyway, married 47 years, have 3 sons that are the loves of my life. And 11 grandchildren, 1 which is a great grandchild. So we're busy and happy and just loving them grandbabies and just loving life. Yeah.
Yes. So you mentioned that you started with Christian fundamentalism at the age of 4. Now you can say yes or no to this, but what denomination were you linked with, if you can answer?
Well, a whole bunch.
Okay. Yes.
Maybe it should be an absence of pedigree, because I am really a Christian mutt. Oh my gosh, we're involved with so many, Nikki Cruz, David Wilkerson.
Oh my gosh.
Full Gospel Businessmen. I know I'm dating myself. Full Gospel Businessmen's Association. Jesus People.
Yes.
Youth for Christ. Home churches. But I was confirmed in the Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod in Wisconsin. Had a wonderful reverend there who was just a real precious man that I adored. But yeah, we had an interesting thing happen within our family. My parents had best friends that lived across the street from us that, they used to hang out with and drink with and party with, and all of us kids hung out together, but she had several miscarriages after having 2 healthy children and 1 stillborn, and decided to go with some fertility drugs that they were offering back in the early 60s. Got pregnant, and the baby was born normally, but had some odd things going on, and they found widespread terminal cancer in this little, she was just a few months old.
Sure.
They got involved with the charismatic fundamentalist movement out of I guess Tulsa, with Oral Roberts.
Okay. Yep.
Other voices that were doing the healing thing and have faith and all this other stuff, and lo and behold, the baby was miraculously healed like that. was written up in the medical journals, and
Yeah.
that got my parents really involved because they were so intimate with this, their best friends and their journey. And so they were immersed, hook, line, and sinker into the Christian fundamentalist movement. And, we were in tow. So we went to home churches,
Mhm.
we went to our Lutheran church, and, we
Mhm.
spoke in
Mhm.
tongues, and, you know,
Mhm.
had the whole, experience of Christian fundamentalism. And I stayed within that for, oh gosh, until I was 15 or so.
Mhm.
And my dad died suddenly. And so I had a little bit of a, I don't know, guess maybe a shock to the system. And I kind of walked away from all of that for a good while. Then got
Yes.
married,
Yes.
started having babies, and felt the pull to get back into church to get those kids baptized because I didn't want them going to hell, you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm. Yep.
taught. And so really kind of, gosh, then it was a Second Presbyterian church. It was a shepherding church in Wisconsin. It was a Bible church once we had moved to Alabama. So, I mean, I was, when I say a mutt, I mean, we had a
Mm.
lot of experiences within a very broad sector of Christianity. Some that was fundamentalist, some that wasn't. Like Second Presbyterian, the
Oh
pastor
my goodness.
would swear, and they embraced abortion, and we were like, what's going on here? And
Yeah.
uh, he would, yeah, I remember he said he used the Lord's name in vain. That's what I told my
Oh
husband
my.
at one of the baseball games that we were at, and they would drink beer afterwards. And then our neighbors invited us to this Bible church where the head of the church was called Prophet, if that gives you a I
Oh
mean,
yeah. That gives. Yes.
what that was like. And so then we moved from Alabama and went to a spirit-filled, charismatic Methodist church here in my city. And that's really where I flourished, where I had the most interesting experiences, was kind of thrust into the deliverance ministry. And
Oh yeah.
we saw
Mm.
we saw a whole bunch of stuff there. I mean,
Oh yes.
we saw shape shifting happen. I
Oh.
mean,
Mhm.
it was pretty
Mhm.
intense. And
Mhm.
but then after being there, we were there for about 9 years, and we started having um, expanded deliverance experiences that
Mm.
included like shamanism.
Mm.
Um, we were experiencing healing for nations, for um, um, whole groups of people. It was really more corporate that was happening, and we didn't know what the heck we were doing, and
Sure.
uh, but we trusted the
Yep.
just the goodness of the spirit, and but because it looked as odd as it could. Um, our pastor said, knock it off. And we're like, well, we're not doing it anymore.
We're
It's
not
just
doing
happening.
anything. Yeah.
It doesn't matter where we go. Like one time I went and thought, well, I'm not going to talk about anything to do with, spirits or deliverance or anything. And went to a little church down in a city named Port Lavaca, Texas. For those that have a little bit of knowledge with Spanish, it's Port of the Cow or Port of Milk, Port Lavaca.
Oh
But
wow.
anyway,
Okay.
there's a little lesson there, a little Spanish lesson. But going to this church, so I decided I wasn't going to talk about anything controversial. And someone in the church spontaneously started going through deliverance. It was a 9-year-old boy. And that would happen. I would go and I would speak somewhere. People would roll their eyes back in their head, and I would look
Mm.
around, see, the demonic manifest, even when it was like, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Mm-hmm,
It was,
right. Yes.
it would happen in a movie theater sitting next to somebody. So, I mean, I started feeling like I might be some kind of a catalyst, maybe for this, which is something after now it's been since the 1990s, I'm pretty familiar with the whole process and why things happen the way they do. But after a while of being involved, and this was 1999, I started to question just real basic things like, would God really torture people? Would, if he tells us to pray for and to love our enemies, does it make sense that he would, torture his? I started questioning hell and some of the other, major tenets of the faith, and they didn't like that,
Sure. And I think that, and it's interesting, I'm just going to cut in here for a second, because I'm going to ask you just to define what is a fundamentalist, because I think I can know maybe in my own head what I think that is, or, but it's a big movement right now in America. I mean, your journey sounds exactly like mine, being confirmed in Missouri Synod. I thought, oh my gosh, I've had the same full gospel businessmen, the whole entire thing. Like, I experienced all of that as a child. I mean, was in the church for over 30, almost 40 years. So
wow.
I saw all these different things, but I would say that there was fundamental Christian, fundamentalism. How do you define that for people?
For me, and someone may describe this differently, but to me, fundamentalism means that if you don't believe like I believe, you are going to hell. And so within fundamentalism, there's between 38 and 41,000 different Christian denominations. And so within fundamentalism, there has to be obviously thousands upon thousands, and each one has their own description and rules and regulations. But fundamentalism is basically, you follow this or you may not be saved. You follow this or you're on shaky ground. And so each needs something to prop up their idea of who and what God is. And if you don't follow that to the letter, then you are in danger. You could be anathema. You could be cursed. You could be, bound for hell. And fundamentalism, I talk a lot about the friends that I had within Christian fundamentalism that just they defriend you, they shun you, they talk poorly about you, because Christian fundamentalism requires, depends upon consensus for them to feel safe. And so there is no consensus, then they themselves are on shaky ground, so they will dismiss you from their life.
Yes. And oh my gosh, I can totally speak to that. I can say that happened in my own life, especially being a lesbian. That as well just added a whole, kit and caboodle on the whole thing. And so what were some areas of fundamentalism that you really believed, hook, line, and sinker, and then they began to shift for you?
Oh gosh, one main thing that happened was we had a man come and speak. This is after I left the church, but he came to speak to us. He was from the World Breakthrough Network. It's a congress. They call it a congress, and it's out of Trinidad, and they follow their leader called Noel Woodruff.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I don't want to say anything, bad. It's a fundamentalist type environment, but they have a whole different slant on apostleship, and They don't want women in ministry. Some things are a little archaic. But anyway, he came into town and he was just this rough and tumble gangster, like South African black man that really was an Indian. He was from India, but he lived in South Africa. So he was just cool. He had really had such awesome teachings. And so he came over to our house, and we had a big living room. We had 40 people there. And he starts the meeting by saying this, Ellen. He just says, okay, so I'm just going to say this, before we get started, that for those that believe Satan and Lucifer are one and the same, I'm here to tell you they are not. But do not believe me, study for yourself. Okay, let's start the meeting. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Oh,
wow.
I was like, wait a minute, you can't,
yeah.
you can't say that without qualifying what you mean. And he said, yes, I can. And I did. And for those that are interested, I will send a whole page of scripture for you to study for yourself. And I said, okay. So he sent, and based in deliverance ministry and kicking out demons and doing all this stuff.
Sure.
So then he said that, and I did the study. And after a couple of weeks, I realized this man is right. And so I thought, if I have this wrong, then what else have I acquiesced into my knowledge base? And, I learned about the word dogma. What is it out there that I have not questioned responsibly? What have I just acquiesced into my knowledge base? Who and what God is, who and what Jesus is, who and what Satan is, who and what demons are. What have I done? And so, I really had a breakthrough. And it started with that concept, but I also had an experience one day where one of my friends was kind of an acquaintance, was in the hospital, and she was not doing well. And I had a friend come over to my house and she said, do you think that, she's saved? The one that was in the hospital, do you think she's saved? And I went to answer her, Ellen, and I couldn't think. It was like, and I'm really dating myself, but I describe it as my computer screen went blank and the DOS prompt came up in the corner.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Sitting there blinking because I didn't know what the word saved meant. And she said, are you okay? And I was looking around the room thinking, where are my words? What? Okay, there's a table. I haven't lost that. There's a chair. There's a rug. There's a lamp. But what does saved mean? And it was completely gone. And I was having this moment where, I looked down at my hand and I saw the wrinkles and the age spots. And in the blink of an eye, I realized that when the scripture alluded to being saved, it was talking about becoming immortal.
Oh, wow.
And what is this? And I just,
wow.
So I look at my skin and I started to peer through my eyes like it's like my consciousness shifted from that of a human to that of divinity inside a body. And so I was looking around the room, and I was looking at, thinking about the word saved. I was looking at my friend. I was looking at my skin aging, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have it all wrong. And just like that, I was back in my humanity again, but I was like, what was that? And so now I had to study everything that I could find on immortality and what the scripture said, but more than that, what I felt it was now, because I had like a divine intervention. Something came into me looked out my eyes and gave me a whole different, frame of reference for what it means to be saved. And the way that I saw saved as a human was so trite. It was so small. It was so limited. But I was given a glimpse, and it completely destroyed me. It just trashed everything that I believed. And it was like I had no choice but to start over, because it was during that time. And another experience that I had, was running a really high temperature. I was trying to get warm. I was in the shower and just shaking, and I had a bacterial infection in my lungs and my throat and my ears. Ugh. But when I was in the shower, I was thinking about this Satan and Lucifer thing, and it was like I had this. And I know now that it's a form of channeling, except not like an entity. It's really you, which is what I think all channeling is. It's either a former life or something. But this intelligence that was me was telling me things about the stars in the book of Revelation 12, where it talks about the tail of the dragon drew and through. And this is what it spoke to me: the third part of the stars. And we interpret that as a third of the stars, but it's not. It's how humanity was brought down in this, don't want to call it a fall, but it's like a purposeful devolution into a body. And how we had such limited understanding, but that we were beginning to come up and come out, just like with baptism. I started seeing in metaphors. I started, I would look at baptism at, on TV, or someone, going to someone's baptism, and instead of a child or a person, getting wet with water, I was seeing divinity willingly lowering itself into humanity and holding its breath while it was under the waters of being human, and until the time of coming up and coming out. So I started seeing in metaphor. I no longer had the same conclusion about communion and baptism. It was just, I was imploding and exploding all at the same time, with a whole different understanding. And Ellen, my poor husband and friends, I'm sure that they probably thought that I was losing my mind. So I couldn't stop talking about it. I'm hearing these voices talk to me about all this stuff. I couldn't write it down fast enough. I couldn't process it. I couldn't assimilate what I was hearing. But I was hearing. And that's what really jettisoned me, changed my whole trajectory from Christian fundamentalism and into, I guess I would say, maybe mysticism or metaphor. I don't even know. I can't label myself, because I don't even. Yeah, I don't know what I believe. I know what I know. I know what I know, but I don't know what I would call myself, if anything.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Barbara, there is so much to unpack in that moment. So were you still were you still within the church at that point, or had you completely left the church when those things started happening to you?
I was, when the man came and spoke at my house and challenged us, I had already left, because I was holding meetings rather than in the church. So yeah, it was such a tumultuous, painful time, when you look at church. I mean, that was my life. I loved the people, and but I also knew that the things that we were experiencing it just, when you put yourself under a covering of a
Yeah.
pastor, you can rise no further than where they are because you have put yourself under an energetic barrier.
Mm, mm,
So I knew that I had to leave,
yeah,
and I didn't want to be disruptive to my
sure.
my pastor whom I loved and my church, and I didn't
Hmm.
want to, but I knew I couldn't stay. And there was also a lot of rumors and backstabbing and things that just weren't true that people were saying.
Yes,
And
yes.
I didn't know how to deal. I just, so I left. And I was like a wounded little dog that curled up in a ball and just wept for, gosh, it was over a year. I'm embarrassed to say it was a long time.
Oh, there's no need for embarrassment. I think that that's part of the unpacking, right? That's part of the whole healing journey. Is it's layer by layer by layer. It can't be quick. I mean, you had revelation that came and it was like whoosh, but
Right.
then coming out of all that stuff that got in the heart, that got in the soul, that got, into different places took time. It just does. Now, while you were so so how did you navigate? Okay, because I'm going to ask like kind of two questions here. So you had these wild experiences and oh my gosh, talk about downloads you had. That's incredible. That anyway, that's incredible. So then did you go try to seek out what, like, where did you go to try to figure out what was happening to you? Did you look at other spiritualities? Did you cross over that way? Or because some people do that.
Interesting question. That was late 90s, early 2000s. And that was, when the internet was not,
Yeah, yeah.
it was not a good search tool because I didn't know what the hell was happening to me. I just
Right.
didn't understand. I mean, and I'm not even scraping the surface here. I mean, I had full body shakes come over me. I had electricity running up and down my body. I landed in the emergency room at least 6 times. I mean, I had some really freaky stuff happen to me. Um, and yet um, I was hearing, validation and comforting words.
Mm,
But when you're in the midst of it is, I can remember waking up one night and my body was, I mean, I had a current running through my body and I could feel it roll down my body and in my stomach. My whole stomach contracted and then expanded. And it was like I had a wave going over my body. And when it got down to my toes, my toes bent and cramped, like this. And then it would come up and it would just, and I
yeah.
was, what is happening? My husband was traveling. I got up to go get my sister who was living with us at the time to tell her. And the minute I put my foot on the floor, I heard that voice say, just breathe. And so I laid back down and I focused on my breathing and it got better. And I woke up, the next morning. But I mean, even I can remember laying there one night and it was maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. And I woke up because the whole bed was vibrating. I mean, making my teeth chatter. This is how hard it was vibrating. And I woke up my husband and I was like, do you feel that? And he said, yeah. And I said, what's going on? And he said, the bed's vibrating. And in the next breath, he was sound asleep. I mean, so there was
Oh,
like this
wow.
weird stuff happen. And but so we looked up the next day to see if there was an earthquake or a gas explosion here in Texas or something. But then, like 2 weeks later, we traveled to North Carolina. It happened there in a Holiday Inn. Yeah. I'm talking weird stuff.
Yep.
Physical,
Yep.
mental, emotional, spiritual stuff happened on the daily. And I mean, that the whole bed shaking thing happened at least a half a dozen times. It happened to him when I wasn't there. So it wasn't just me.
Sure.
But what I have come to understand in that, and again, your question was, where did I search? I really didn't have anybody to ask about this stuff because, who goes through stuff like that back then?
Right. Right. Right.
Now it's way more commonplace. But
Mm-hmm.
so what I would do is, believe it or not, I would have books like show up in my mailbox. I
Oh my
would
God.
No,
Yeah.
I would do like the half price bookstore, and I just stand there, or to Barnes and Noble, and I would just stand at the self-help, spiritual
Sure.
thing. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I need help. Please help
Mm-hmm.
me. And
Mm-hmm.
I would always get what I needed when I needed it. But there were times where maybe a year would go by and I wouldn't, really hear anything, but I know that something was
Mm-hmm.
formulating inside of me. And, life experiences too, happened to us. But yeah, there really wasn't anybody to talk to,
Right.
because that I talked to, they either wanted to chastise me, they wanted to tell
Yep.
me I was in a dangerous place. And yet I knew, Ellen, that
Mm-hmm.
I just had to keep searching. And, I had weird kind of orb-like things show up in my
Mm-hmm.
room. I had
Mm-hmm.
beautiful robed beings, like there were three that didn't have they had a gold glow for a face.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
each time that they showed up, the next morning I would wake up with information that I had to try to explain or to understand. So I knew that, they call them downloads now. What
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what they were.
Sure. Yeah.
They happened,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
knew that I needed to write. So I went
Mm.
to, I went to Sedona in 2008, and this was
Oh,
after
wow.
I had my son had a horrible wreck, a motorcycle accident in 2005. There was a whole lot that happened during that time. He died on the side of the road, and my husband raised him from the dead. I mean, incredible. I don't know if you knew that story, but he did it with sound. He did it with grief. But Chris came back. He was riding a motorcycle, 70 miles an hour, went headlong into a pickup truck coming the other way that was going 70. So it was a combined impact of 140. My son Chris was not wearing a helmet. My husband saw everything. My youngest son was riding behind my husband. They saw everything. Life flighted to Houston Memorial Hermann Hospital, saved his life. But yeah, it's chapter 3 in my book, and at the end I can tell people where to get it, and if they
Sure.
want
Sure.
the electronic copy, I'm happy to share it for no cost. But it's an incredible story, and I knew I needed to write. But in 2008, I went to Sedona, and there's a man there that was giving a talk on the vortices, the vortexes or vortices.
Yes. Yes.
Um, he was this amazing man. His name was Ted Andreas, I think. But he calls himself Mr. Sedona. And he, looked at me and my friend. I had a girlfriend that went there with me, and he said, if you guys can stay after the meeting, there's something I'd like to say. So we sat through a 45-minute presentation on the
Sure. Yeah.
and afterwards, of course, everybody wants to talk to the speaker. And so we waited and waited. But then when everybody was gone, he came and just like slid into the chair next to me, and he looked at me and he said, "So, do you write?" And I was like, well, I'm thinking about, he said, "You need to write a book. You need to write, you need to write, you need to write." And so I was like, and the guy read my mail. I mean, it was like he was a
Yeah.
prophet. He wasn't
Yeah.
Christian, New Age guy. And so I always had encouragement and validation along the way. But there really was no one to ask about this stuff. There is
Yeah.
now,
Mhm.
thankfully. But back
Mhm.
then I was I was alone. And boy, I was happy about it too. I was like, I don't have anyone to talk to.
Oh gosh, gosh. But you know what? Your journey, what you're sharing, I know is going to reach people, even though it was, time of, years ago that these things happen, because there's a lot of us that feel that loneliness. We've had certain experiences. Who do you talk to? Who can you talk to? You can't go back to the church because the church doesn't understand, and they're in their own paradigm, and that's where they are. And then, the friends that you thought you could talk to, well, no, that's not happening either, because they're just in this paradigm. So you are kind of like feeling like you're in your own vortex, really. You're just spinning in this thing as that information is coming. And it's interesting, some of the things that you've shared, because in the last year, I have been having these shakings and these releases, and they started one night over in England. I'm sleeping in my bed. No one is around. Here I am. And then all of a sudden, boom, it happened. And I had to go to the hospital. I've been to the hospital now a few times with this thing, trying to figure out what it was. And I was just realizing, wait a minute, I know it. Like, what was coming to me was there was just releases of trauma, healing was happening. There's the shedding of things. There's all these different things. And I'm sitting here listening to your story, and I'm going, I wonder if I had gone through that like in the 90s, what would people would have been lining me up to be prayed for, to be delivered. Whereas today it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is this type of stuff, that can be happening. So for me, what it's done is there's just been a real, I don't know if you've maybe experienced this, and I'm going to ask you to, but just healing personally, but also coming through just a real shedding. As that shedding's happening, there's an authenticity that comes. You start to discover who you are and what you're made for and what you're made about and all this stuff. Where are you now, like with all of this? I'm sure you're still unpacking, but there's something that's happened that's grounded you, and there's a solidifying in areas with you. What is that?
Well, gosh, it's just been nonstop,
Mm,
nonstop experiences,
mm,
nonstop synchronicities. I mean,
mm.
I remember back in the church, Ellen, when we would experience a synchronicity, we could eat off that thing for like a year.
Oh yeah, yeah, we could. Yes, we did.
And now it's like craps are happening every day.
Yeah.
But, I really, one of the things that has helped me is, I still go through my crap. I still,
Sure.
I had a massive betrayal. Oh, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, by a family member, kind of an ex-family member. And even today, I'm thinking about it and hurt by it. But just in these experiences, there's always, now I say, what can I learn from this?
Yeah. Yeah.
This way. And I'm learning to give validation to my emotions,
Oh
because
yeah.
for so long, within fundamentalism, we were told to forgive and to move on, and there was no process,
You didn't have
and
any emotion. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you were, you have to forgive, and blah, blah, blah. And, so really the last several years has just been healing. And I got to tell you, 2 weeks ago, I don't even know what I think about this, Ellen, but 2 weeks ago, I went through deliverance.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well,
And
hey, that's yep.
spontaneously.
Uh,
I, I was talking, get this, I have two friends that are lifelong, dyed in the wool, would never leave me, love me dearly. And I had someone comment on my Facebook page about having a trauma bond with Jesus. And I was like, all right, what's this? I mean,
yeah. 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 Sure.
did that, is that true? Did that? And so, but her experience was very authentic. And I talked to, who Renee Gade is?
Yeah, I
Renee,
do. Mhm.
that's her name. But she did this video on deconstructionists. Why did they stop deconstructing at Jesus?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I mean, I was like,
Mm,
that's, it hit me.
mm.
And so this woman made this comment about, going through deliverance, with a trauma bond. So, I mean, I get on the phone and I call my friends, they live in Austin. And I was like, what do you think about this? What, I mean, do you think that what do you think? All three of us went through deliverance at the same time,
Oh my God. What?
spontaneously. Yes. And I mean, I had manifestations for a day.
Oh
It
man.
was, but afterwards, I'm like, what happened? Because I
Yeah.
have the experience, and then there's this just like this something that
Mm.
opens that I can understand what just happened. But I mean, oh my gosh, lighter. And not only was the trauma bond with fundamentalism, because how long, 43 years, I was
I
threatened.
know.
I
Yeah.
would, I mean, I was talking to my husband at this funeral that we went to in 2017. And I told him, I said, you know, after we sat there for a little while, I started keeping track of how many times they threatened us with torture, with hell, with separation, with not seeing this
Oh
man
my God.
unless and did a freaking altar call at the service. And it happens all the time. Bow your
Yeah.
head, close your
Yeah.
eyes, looking up, say this prayer with me,
Yeah.
asking spirit to come into you. And I'm
Yeah.
like, is this a mass possession kind of thing? Because I'm
Wow.
learning the
Yeah.
power of the egregore and,
Mhm.
telling you what these people believe. That's not the God and the Jesus that I know.
Yes. Yes.
And and I have to say this at the same time, I don't even know what I know, but I know it's not that.
Absolutely.
I know that this kind, benevolent, loving God is not going to torture anybody. And
Yes.
so if lifting up this entity with
Yeah.
worship and praise, all they're doing is strengthening a power that is
Yeah.
not what they think it is. And so when I went through this deliverance with my friends, I mean, I just get goosebumps thinking about it. What in the world did I have in me?
Yeah. Oh my.
I mean, because I've been out since 99. I have done a lot of personal work,
Mm.
psychological, mental, spiritual. I've done it. I've
Mhm.
taken Reiki. I'm a Reiki master. I've looked into the tarot. I look into dowsing. I mean, I've looked into everything because I
Mhm.
want whole and healed. I've done my
Mhm.
work. And yet, when you're ready, it doesn't matter what you think about yourself. If it's your time, it was my time and I went through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I remember, you were talking about the whole trauma bond with Jesus, and I had this thing happen with Jesus. The whole idea of this of the lies that I had unpacked and believed about Jesus and what Jesus would say. And I was with my girlfriend. We're sitting in the living room. Nothing's happening. We're just sitting there. Okay. And all of a sudden, Jesus, which looked like Jesus, walked into the room and started saying something to me that was really rough. And I rose up inside myself and I said, "Don't talk to me like that." And I watched Jesus shrink. And I went, "Paula, Jesus is shrinking." Okay, now this was like really powerful. And I said, "He's shrinking." She's like, "What?" I said, "Jesus is shrinking," and she doesn't have a religious background. So she's like free of all this other stuff. And here I am, I'm telling Jesus in my living room, like, "Don't talk to me like that." And every time I said it, it shrunk and shrunk and shrunk to the image to where it got really, really small. And there was this understanding right then that what I had believed in, what I had put my faith in, what I had been taught to receive into my heart was not right at all. And so I denounced it. I remember I was sitting there and I started weeping. The tears came because of the betrayal, the feeling of betrayal. And as I started to cry, I remember myself saying something. "I'm so sorry, God." That's what I said. And Jesus got bigger. And I went, "Wait a minute." And I said, "I'm just so sorry." And it was coming up. "I'm so sorry that I believe it." And Jesus got bigger and bigger and bigger in the living room. And I
Wow.
said, "You're not what I want in my life." And it got smaller. I mean, he's literally started shrinking. And I was realizing it was a false
Mhm.
Jesus. It was the egregore version of Jesus that I had believed. And I went through like a deliverance. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, you understand. It was like combination between like, I'm gonna vomit, everything's coming out every which way. And I'm just like, man, this whole thing is a mess. But when I did that, when I released that,
Mhm.
oh my God, the
Yep.
light feeling.
Yes.
And it was
Yes.
like I could suddenly, it was like the veil, it talked about, in the Bible, the veil is ripped up. Well, that's what literally happened. It felt like my
Mhm.
very words were unpacking this veil. My very beliefs were either putting the veil on or taking the veil off by
Right.
whatever I spoke out of my mouth. And it was powerful. And I haven't looked back since. After that started a whole, and then started the whole shaking and all that. The next thing after that, it just kept on going. It's the gift that keeps on giving, Barbara. But it's real. And when you're saying, this jacking up, and I remember, and it was funny because about, I want to say, oh gosh, 10 years ago, I remember asking Jesus a question. And I said, "Why are people doing all these things in your name?" And Jesus said, "I never asked anybody to do this. I never asked anybody to worship me. I never asked any." And it was amazing how that I knew was something different. And I was, talking to Jesus at the time. I've just shifted and changed a lot. But it was like, wow, like this was not what was supposed to happen. This whole lifting up this spirit and asking this spirit into, oh my God. Anyway, I could just go on and on. But I just want to say that, like, I see what you're saying there. I understand that bond, that it is a trauma, because what
Yeah.
was coming out of me was traumatic. There
Yes.
was nothing, it wasn't light. We weren't like, boop, oh, all of a sudden I'm okay. It was ripping the gut. I don't know if that's how you felt, but that's how it felt for me. It was, yeah.
I had the typical deliverance, the belching, the coughing, but I had
Oh,
incredible acrid thing come out of my esophagus and up into my throat. I mean, it was
yeah, yeah. See, it's real. It's
it
real
is
stuff.
it is real. And um yeah, forever changed, light.
Yep,
uh,
yep.
but I also know that, I mean, I had asked for this a while ago and nothing really happened. So I know that there's a timing to these
Yes,
things that is vital, that
yes. Mm,
we trust. But
absolutely.
I've talked to a few people about this process and I can see, the wheel spinning because, I mean, Ellen, what sense does it make to invite a spirit into your body?
It doesn't.
We are divine beings. It's already there, but this religion taught us to entreat and to call this into our body, and it's out of fear. So our vibration has to match whatever is incoming. So there has to be a palette made for entrance that is based on fear of rejection, fear of separation, fear of damnation, fear of torture, all this fear in order to say, come in. And so there's this really cool picture of a trauma bond where there's this man that's all shot up with arrows, and he's got arrows all over him, and he's embracing the guy that's holding the bow. And they describe a trauma bond, the old-fashioned term is the Stockholm syndrome, where you have to do something, behave in a manner that you feel will save your life. And so, what we have with Patty Hearst, here's this poor girl who begins to rob banks with her captors because why? Because she wants to live, but it's this deeply ridiculous bond with your captor. And so what I'm saying is the Jesus of Christian fundamentalism is not who we think it is. Because the historical figure is not the same as the Christian fundamentalist version, is not the same as the cosmic Christ. There's we are so confused with who and what we believe in that we end up believing in an egregore that results in possession.
Yes. Oh my God. Which explains, and I know we're going to be stepping on toes, and don't worry about the time, which explains why when you go to talk to someone, the reasoning ability, the ability to reason something as basic as loving your neighbor to the president that you want, to whatever it may be, whatever there's a reasoning, they just can't get there. They literally can't get there because that possession is blocking them from critical thinking. Like when that egregore version of Jesus died in me, there was a greater level of critical thinking that took place. I was suddenly like, oh my God, and I was able to make decisions. I didn't have the fear, like, what will Jesus think and what will God do to me if I stopped praying, believe it or not. I stopped praying at that point. I stopped even the praying in Jesus' name, all of that stuff when it left, because it was like, I could think clearly.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I know.
I know. I know.
All my friends and I said, hey, how are you guys feeling? I mean, something's going on here. I feel very light, and it was a powerful time that took all three of us completely by surprise.
Yes.
Because I truly was just asking them, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's, stuff starts like, oh my God, I can't believe we're all going.
Oh my God. Oh gosh. So where do you see, because this is happening, it's happening in people's lives. People are not talking about it necessarily. We're talking about it on here, but it can be happening in people's lives. Where do you see this all headed? Like those of us who are deconstructing and coming into the like where are we headed, Barbara? Like, do you have any idea like what this is looking like?
I'm taking notes here. So one of the main things is what you said, and that is regaining our critical thinking. And this is a biggie because everything in a Christian fundamentalist's mind is filtered through fear.
Absolutely.
Everything is filtered through fear. So when whatever that is, that's in there is taken out of the way, that allows a person to think something without the filter of fear. Because, if you think about it, the whole message of Christian fundamentalism, and I'm careful to draw the distinction between Christianity and Christian fundamentalism.
Mm-hmm.
The whole message is separation, division, trauma, fear, shunning, ostracization. I mean, it is all so anti-Christ, anti-love, anti-anything that you would want to associate with a loving creator.
Mm.
Crazy that they believe what they believe. It's crazy what I believed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But so where is it going? People are beginning to see, and I think that, and I'm just going to step out here, but I think that what you went through, that you were a beneficiary, but you are also someone that stands in for way more than one person. And so these gatekeepers that are going through this process, and I count myself in that number because I've had more than one experience in this, but it's like when we go through it, it's like the gate is opened, and now all anybody needs to do is walk through it on their own. So something is cleared on a national, if not global level, for people to come out of this mist, to come out of their thinking so erroneously into a place where they clearly have their critical thinking abilities returned. Some, like me, 4 years old, that I've had to reclaim from almost a baby, a toddler.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember going into this meeting when I was 10 in Milwaukee at a place called the War Memorial, beautiful building down on the lakefront. And there was a man there that was preaching from England. And when I walked in the room during this praise and worship, I mean, I was one that could feel, wafts of electricity over my body as I walked into this presence where everyone was doing this corporate worship. And but then the preacher gets up there, and it's like a high, that happens with this type of egregore. But this preacher gets up there and begins to speak about, going to hell and getting saved and, all this erroneous crap. But what happens is this: we may feel a genuine spiritual experience with a benevolent and kind and loving God. But then when someone you love and trust gets up there and you see the miraculous happen, those miracles tend to validate whatever system of belief you find yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
Because the bona fide miraculous does not withhold itself, regardless of our stupidity and our error. It freely flows, but then it validates, well, no, this happened, that guy was raised from the dead, so I know, what he was saying is true. No, but we make that leap and that connection. So at the end of the day, where we're headed is our critical thinking is going to return. And not only that, our autonomy to speak truth and our agency as agents of truth. In other words, when I Christian fundamentalism has taken incredible agency.
Yes.
Incredible agency. You know, whether it's the Mormons that come and knock on your door, whether it's you're at a public place and all of a sudden, you know, I was in a graduation for one of my grandkids at high school, and the guy speaking and teaching or giving the keynote was this incredible coach that the kids all looked up to, loved this man. What a wonderful guy. And I mean, everything he said. And then at the very end, he said, and I am just so thankful that Jesus saved my soul. And it was like, what just happened? And, you know, the outrage that was inside of me was a little bizarre, because there was a time, Ellen, where I would have gone, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And now this is a public place. How would you feel if someone that was from the Islamic faith got up there and paid homage to Allah? Stop it. There is a reason, there's a separation, but that autonomy and that agency is returning to us. We have been quiet while Christianity has run roughshod over us in many, many ways. Critical thinking is returning, autonomy is returning, and agency is returning to speak the truth.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, I have chills. Just wow. Yeah, I have chills thinking about what you just said here. You know, it's very interesting that I see similarities in the New Age movement. And I'm being very careful here because, you know, I've got friends that are New Agers, and you know, I love them in every way. But coming through Christian fundamentalism like I have, and seeing the hierarchical structure, the very architect of Christianity, and how it wields itself, how it does, you know, it speaks these unctions and does all of these things. And when I left Christianity, I went into that. When I left fundamentalism, really. When I went to that, I started to look at that area. I thought, oh, I wonder what this is all about. I started to really see the same structure. I saw the same giving yourself over to higher things and letting things come in and speak through you. And I remember just thinking to myself, okay, something doesn't feel right here with this. Because they say, well, I just move out of the way and the spirit comes. And I thought, oh my God, that's exactly what we did in Christian fundamentalism. We died to ourselves, died to our flesh, died to our autonomy, moved over a little bit so that then this entity could come inside of us. It was the same thing that happens in the New Age movement. I'm not saying that I'm not saying people are wicked or anything like that. I'm just saying I think part of the truth that we're starting to, at least I can say in my own life, is recognizing that other spiritualities have the same architectural structure. They have the exact same thing, just packaged a little bit differently. They have their own books, they have their own cards, they have their own thing, you know, they have all these different things. And though I have had very interesting downloads by psychics, and I've had some really accurate things, it also opened my eyes to that fact that there's some very big similarities there. So where do you see that going? Where do you see us coming with this truth, coming and bringing this, as you say? How does that stretch into other spiritualities, would you say?
Wow. I'm going to grab a book right over here to my right.
Sure thing. Yep.
Read today.
Yep.
Okay. Excellent book, by the way.
Oh, I've never heard of it. Okay.
It's
I'm going to write that down. Okay.
Okay. So this is exactly to your question. Dion Fortune, it's a lady, used to say that the best way of judging the spiritual health of any organization was not to take its public teachings and statements as proof of its integrity, but rather look closely at the type of person its discipline has turned out. Period.
Oh, wow. There we are.
Best way of judging the spiritual health of any organization was not to take its public teachings and statements as proof of its integrity, but rather look closely at the type of person its discipline has turned out. And so gone are the labels. And I'll tell you that an egregore, people will say, well, no, my neighbors that my parents, that got us into this whole thing to begin with when I was 4, egregores can be benevolent or malevolent, depending upon the people that prop it up. Because that's what creates an egregore, is the people and their beliefs and their emotions. So yes, good things can happen, along with bona fide miracles, but good things can happen within any organization where there is an egregore. This is where this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Look at the fruit of their life.
Yes.
If the tree doesn't bear good fruit, then wherever it's planted is malevolent. This is the whole defines regaining your critical thinking, is to be able to look critically at things and say, that doesn't pass the spit test or whatever you want to say. That's not that, and I can't explain this, but intuition is, for me, I think for many, many, many years I was hit and miss. I feel so sure of the things that I'm feeling now, that we need to learn to trust what we are seeing, feeling, hearing, sensing. We need to run this by whatever it is. We need to run this by our own understanding, our own guidance, and trust in that. And that's the return. I mean, once we begin to have those positive, good experiences, rather than relying on what somebody else says, trust in what we're seeing and hearing and feeling on our own, because that guidance, I don't think, will steer us wrong.
Yes, yes. So where do you see healing going then with that? Because, people consult healers, people consult shamans, people consult different people for things. Do you believe that there's still a place for other people to walk in those gifts when autonomy and agency and all of these things is happening? Or do you feel that that'll eventually die out, if you don't mind me asking?
I feel that the more empowered we are, the less that we will look externally.
Yeah.
The more empowered we become, the more our critical thinking and agency returns, the more confident we grow in who and what we are, which is the creator of the universe and beyond.
Oh, yeah.
The less that we will have to look externally. The less we will have to look. And that's, one of the most profound scriptures. And I love the Bible, because it's not a Christian book. It's been hijacked, but it's not. It's a mystical book. And, it says, if someone says, come, the Christ is over here or over there, do not believe them.
Yeah.
It's internal. This is who we are. We are the God of the multiverse, investing itself into flesh and blood for a very physical human experience. This is a new creation. This is the creation of the God-man, Emmanuel. That's what the earth is producing. And so, yes, there is a time to look externally. I mean, even if you want to put a lot of faith in what the scripture says, there's a time for that. But it also describes us as being children. There comes a time to weigh those things. And, it says there'll come a time when no man will teach you.
Yes.
And we're on the precipice of that age. And we're beginning to shed, like you described your experience, we're shedding this old grave clothing from our past indoctrination. Not that it didn't serve, it served us.
Sure.
It served us well, just like the womb of a mother serves the babe. without it, it can't survive. But if it stays inside of it, it'll die.
Mhm. So what do you do with people who are afraid then? They're like, yes, I hear you, Barbara. That sounds amazing and great, my personal agency, but I don't know if I can totally trust that. I've tried to heal myself and it's not happening, or I've tried this, that, like, and they get afraid. And so they immediately turn, obviously, to an external. How do we help navigate people to move into that internal space within themselves?
That's a great question. I truly believe that people are where they are and that it benefits them, and that the way that we know that they are where they are with a purpose is because they are where they are.
Mm. Yeah, that makes
I don't think there's anything not on purpose. And so, there's a woman, right now on Facebook that, she's being real combative and quoting a lot of scriptures, and to some extent I'll engage, but I really do think she's where she needs to be. That, it produced something really wonderful in me. And so I don't shortcut anybody else's experience and journey. So I've got my three kids and my grandkids and sisters and nieces and nephews, and the one thing that I've learned is that I can't talk somebody out of a lesson they're supposed to walk through.
Absolutely.
When we do that, and I heard this, and it's kind of a weird description, but maybe the metaphor is real applicable. But if you pull somebody down off their cross, they just have to crawl up there and die another day.
Oh gosh, yes, yes.
So they're in a good place, and I think it's for me, and I still struggle with this, maybe not so much as before, but there's this leftover need to proselytize and to get someone to think like we think. And but it just doesn't have to be that way. And I think that the more we resist somebody's journey is the more that it persists. So we can actually work as an antagonist to their.
Yes.
And so I just trust that the same spirit that's in them, that was in me, is in them, and they're going to get to where they need to be. And I will too, because I'm not staying where I'm staying either.
No, none of us are. No, and there is like an awakening. I mean, it is really happening. I mean, everywhere people
Yeah.
are waking up. There are people I never thought would say things out of their mouths, and I'm like, what? And it's either like, what, in a really like positive way, like, oh my gosh, or it's like, oh my gosh, you went even deeper into like the mess. You know what I mean? It's like there's almost like it's like you're in one camp or the other. It's very interesting what I'm witnessing on the planet per se. Is there's just this real, like, people are going either side, and then there's this middle part here, and people are boomeranging back into it a little bit, and then they go back out again, and then they boomerang back into it again and again, until they begin to sort themselves out, just like myself. And that's me. That journey's been boom, boom, boom. It's been one of those. So do you see a place for religion in the planet? Do you see a place for spirituality, or do you think the new earth, where we're headed, not going to have that in it?
Another great question. Gosh, you're good.
Sorry.
So a place for religion. I studied this when I was looking at that. The tail of the dragon drew and through the third part of the stars, because in there it talks about the man-child that's being birthed, but it also talks about the woman that births the man, has to retreat into the wilderness for a time and half a time, where she, the church structure, the religious structure, the spiritual structure, whatever you want to call it, is fed by God. So, yeah, there is a place for it, because I think that without, for me, using the analogy of the baby, there comes a time, the placenta nourishes and feeds the baby, and it has this incredible
Mm-hmm.
oxygen with the mother's heart and the lungs, and as it develops its own, pulmonary system. But there comes a time when it gets too restrictive and there's not enough room in the belly of the mama, and the baby, begins to innately, organically begins to push up against the mother's diaphragm, and the mother has these incredible, forceful muscular contractions that happen in the abdomen, to where, along with the baby's pushing on the diaphragm, the womb is contracting to push the baby out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and in that narrow way of the birth canal, which is a narrow way just for one, we often want to help, have other people come with us or teach me or, whatever, but it's a birth canal for one. And what happens in that birth canal is, water is analogous to consciousness, but it is so restrictive and so tight in that, especially with a vaginal birth, that it forces the consciousness of the old out of the baby. All the water, the way that it used to breathe, is forced out, and it begins, in a moment, to breathe differently.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a purpose for religion? Yeah, she's beautiful. She's restrictive at times, and she is life-giving at others, and she's a death sentence too. So yeah, there's a purpose for it. I'm glad I'm not in there anymore.
Yes, me too. Me too.
Me, and it's serving those that are still in. And the really cool thing, and it's fascinating to watch this, is they really can't see their way out. They can't see what it's like, just like a baby can't see until it's out. So where they are until they're fully formed is right where they should be. But then there's the time of birth, of breathing and perceiving and seeing things differently. And it's good to be there too.
It is. It is. There's a return of breath. There's a breath where you begin to breathe on your own, right? You come out, and then, the baby is, sometimes they pat the behind or the back or wherever they do it, and the baby begins to breathe on its own. And yes, yeah, there's something beautiful about that. And that's what, when I think about your process, think about mine and the countless other people that we know, even just on Facebook, which is a great community. I always just think of how I just wish that people could see the fruit that we're experiencing of liberation and freedom. It says in the Bible, this is a scripture, it is for freedom, that Christ set us free. Now that's an interesting, I know there's a whole lot to that. I'm not a theologian, but when I think about that scripture, that's what I feel has been happening in my life. It is for freedom. It is about freedom, a true liberty, a true breath, a true awakening, a true consciousness where your body is shedding the old continually, the body of its trauma is shedding the old, your mind is being enlightened, things are happening, and it's beautiful. It is for freedom.
Yeah.
And you just, oh, sometimes my heart just goes, oh, if only my family could see this, if only. And I know what you're saying is exactly right, that they're on their path, and it's serving them where they are, and it's their growth, it's their lesson, it's their classroom. It's not my classroom. My classroom's over here, and they're looking at me going, that's not my classroom. And it's okay. It's all right at the end of the day. But thankful, I can say it now, I couldn't say it years ago, but I am thankful for the Christian experience, even in the fundamentalism that I've had, because it feels like it's given me discernment and intuition, and it's giving me a love of life like I've never had before. I don't know about you, but nature became so alive because, you know, we were always taught to worship the creator, not the creation. And it was just like, I got so distanced from creation. And then it was like creation opened up to me again. And just that childlike joy and that flavor, that dance, that inner spirit of just like, I'm connected with the tree. And, you know, like all these things are restored. And I just appreciate the different people I've met, and now you on my little podcast here, for just your diligence to search it out, your diligence to go, I have no idea what the hell's happening to me, but something's happening, and I've lived long enough to know something's happening. So I'm just going to sit in this. I'm going to try to figure this out as the wheels are turning and spinning and going every which way. But I honor just the path you've walked, Barbara. What you shared today, I've never heard anybody share on my podcast, you know, their experiences like this, these encounters. And it feels like I've come home to something inside my own heart, because I'm like, yes, I've been having these too. And like, who do I talk to? So it feels like, oh, this little, we could use a Christian term here, the koinonia that's happening here online. And I just appreciate how you just continue to want to grow and to learn and to evolve, because you're not going to be the way you are right now 5 minutes from now, 10 minutes from now. You're going to be continually diving in. And that's a great lesson for all of us. That's something I can get behind, is you always wanting to learn and as well help other people along their path. So I really want to say thank you so much. So where can people find you? What can they do to learn more about you? And you have books out.
Yeah, well, the absolute best way is through Facebook. I don't really dabble too much, and I usually try to write every day, and I try to interact with anybody that messages me. I just try the best that I can to interact. And I have 2 books, and the books are this is this kind of the biography, Escaping Christianity, Finding Christ. And it's my story. It's a like 244 pages. This is 6 years worth of social media articles, and it's a big, thick book. It's 444 pages. Anybody that wants those, they can buy them, but I'll send a PDF to anybody that messages me, and they can have it for free as well. So.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you. See, that's that integrity I'm talking about. You have integrity. And thank you, Barbara, for just being here. Thank you for putting that into print for us. Thank you for just being you, being real on here. You were just you. And it blessed me. It just blessed my heart. It just did. So tearing up over here, sisters tearing up.
Oh, well, it's been wonderful to meet you. And I feel the same about you. How lovely.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, as you know, I'm going to be wrapping this up now. I will try to put this on YouTube, and if not, it'll come up on Facebook and people can be able to look at it there. But just know that wherever you are, whatever journey you're on, wherever you find yourself landing, you are okay. Okay, you are okay in your journey. What we're saying is just that there is space and place for you as well in your own journey and your unpacking, but don't just stay there. Don't stay stagnant in the stagnant pool. If you know it's not working for you, you can leap out like a frog. You can get out. You don't need to do the slow boil in the pot and continue to suffer and die over that. So Barbara, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you too.